And legally, you can resist, and I don't suggest anybody do this, an unlawful or illegal arrest. So I'm deeply concerned and troubled about what took place here.
Katie, apparently these teenagers had been quite obnoxious and beforehand, but now to protest in Anaheim, California, an off-duty police officer caught on camera pulling a gun on a group of teenagers, firing one shot. NBC national correspondent Miguel Almaguer has that story from Anaheim.
Let go of me. No, I'm not letting go of you. Let go of me.
Caught on camera, the struggle between an off-duty LAPD police officer and a 13-year-old boy.
Let go of me for the last time.
Though we don't know what happened prior to the recording, the dispute over teens walking across his lawn escalates when the officer is knocked down. He pulls a gun and fires a single shot. The officer has now been placed on leave, and his actions are under investigation.
The facts and circumstances known to the officer at the time he or she makes that critical decision to use force, and in this instance, to use deadly force.
Nobody was injured. 2 teenagers were arrested and released, including the 13-year-old, who we are not identifying by name.
I thought I was gonna die, like, right there. Because I thought he was gonna shoot me, because he was, like, mad.
Police say the officer had ongoing issues with teenagers on the property.
They don't care. They just don't care about people and property.
The teen's mom says her son was arrested for threatening to shoot the officer.
I didn't say that. Are you right? I said I'm going to sue you.
In reality, he was saying, I'm going to sue you.
The shooting triggered protests that turned violent overnight, property damage, and 23 arrests.
I personally wish the off-duty officer would have awaited our arrival before taking action, but instead he decided to confront the juveniles.
Tonight, investigators are trying to piece together what happened here and whether what they call the use of deadly force was justified.
Let's bring in Ted Williams and Katie Fang. Ted, before you were a lawyer, you were a police officer, D.C. homicide in D.C. Your thoughts looking at this video?
Well, Greta, this is an instance where I believe an off-duty police officer overreacted, and there could have been tragic consequences here. The first question is, what was the teen actually being arrested for? And the second question is, and legally, you can resist, and I don't suggest anybody do this, an unlawful or illegal arrest. So I'm deeply concerned and troubled about what took place here.
Katie, apparently these teenagers had been quite obnoxious and beforehand, but the officer did pull a gun rather than calling 911.
Yeah, it was a pretty poor exercise of judgment and I think of discretion. And the fact that he was armed at the time as a cop leads you to be concerned that maybe he didn't really do the right thing. You know, back in 2015, Greta and Ted, there was an increase in accidental discharge of firearms by LAPD officers. And it was turning out that there was a lack of a safety on the gun and there was a very easy pressure point on the triggers. So I wonder if this cop is going to say, I took the gun out, I was fearing for my life because I was surrounded by all of these kids, although I don't know if that sounds totally credible, and I accidentally discharged the gun. I mean, there is a crime in California. Negligent discharge of a firearm can be a misdemeanor or a felony, so this cop is not totally free and clear. He also has internal investigations that he's facing right now as well.
Here's what the off-duty Los Angeles police officer did say. He said he believed his life was in danger when he fired his weapon and fired into the ground. So he said that he feared for his life.
Well, you have to look at the video and you have to look at what took place. Yes, they did rush some of these kids and push the officer. The officer is pulling the kid over. He pulls his gun. And I think to me, the better argument here is that while pulling the kid over, the gun could very well have discharged. But I don't see where he could be out here of his life.
That video does not agree with that, Ted. The video does not show that happening.
I agree with you.
You know what? I mean, I'd like to know. I mean, in no way should he be discharging his gun. Let's get that straight. I mean, and like that. I mean, let's get that. But I would really like to know what preceded this. I mean, you know, what's going on with these teenagers? What are they doing to the neighborhood? Or maybe are they nice kids? Are they kids causing trouble? I mean, that's what we don't have in this video, Katie. There's so much more to this.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's a lot of things that haven't been answered, but I would point out a kind of separate issue that was a result of this shooting or this discharge of the firearm by the cop. The protesting really has me troubled. You have 300 protesters that show up in a regular neighborhood in the city of Anaheim, and they're destroying private property. I got to be honest with you. You can be upset about this cop discharging his firearm, whether it was reasonable or otherwise, but these protesters, they can't be destroying people's private property. I think it's disgusting. And if you want to protest, but do it peacefully and do not do what you're doing in that neighborhood.
And we're so lucky no one was killed on this test. I mean, that's like,
Absolutely.
you know, as bad as this is with the protesters and the lawns and everything, this could have been a much different story.
It could have been, and I'm happy that it worked out the way it is, but we expect law enforcement officers to act appropriately, and I don't think...
And they're trained to do that. They're not trained just to pull their weapons like that.
Well, he was an undercover off-duty officer, and he didn't act appropriately, unfortunately.
Thank you both. Coming up, former Speaker of the House, John Bates.
And legally, you can resist, and I don't suggest anybody do this, an unlawful or illegal arrest. So I'm deeply concerned and troubled about what took place here.
Katie, apparently these teenagers had been quite obnoxious and beforehand, but